conversation.
With a personality shaped by being an athlete and a background in mainstream sports media, I found that the stories I was most interested in telling were the ones often overlooked, the ones that might not otherwise be told, the ones that show the intangible and not just the highlight reel. The Sports Council is about highlighting the great, the good, the unique, and everything in between in the Pacific Northwest sports world. I'm Jamie Council. Thanks for joining me.
You're listening to the Sports Council on 1340 ESPN, the Tri-Cities leader in sports.
Welcome to the Sports Council on 1340 ESPN, your Tri-Cities leader in sports. And normally during these shows, we talk to various coaches, various teams that get to know them, more of a magazine style, as we call it in the radio world. But we're trying something new, and we're joined by Will Bradley. You know his voice, and it's been a long time coming. You've been a friend of the show, we should say.
It's not really new what we're doing because it was MCC Live to start out with. The precursor for the Sports Council was MCC Live, where we covered nothing but the MCC. But you wanted to branch out and roll with it and cover a whole bunch of other sports in the PNW.
And I think it's important to talk to various coaches and not just, have the gift of gab, which I love that we're able to have these conversations, spark these different debates and things like that, which is important in sports, but it's also important to hear from the men in the arena or the women in the arena. Mm-hmm. Having it be the different coaches and programs from around the area. So now we're kind of combining it. We're going back to the roots, and only the OGs of this show would know of the progression, MCC Live, into the Sports Council. And Will, I'm glad you're here.
It's good to be here. Congratulations to Chiawana, state cheerleading champions, MCC representing really well.
It is, and keeping up with local sports is something we are very adamant on doing.
Yes,
so we're
absolutely.
going to go over what's going on in sports right now. A lot is going on as it's playoffs.
Yeah, playoffs.
So we're going to be talking playoffs in the show, going over what's going on right now, teams to look out for, dates to be aware of, and like you mentioned, Chiawana Cheerleading took home a first in state, but they also took home a sixth as well. And there's different things. It's not like one winner, so it's different. It's not better or worse, but it's just different than, let's say, basketball, where at the end of regulation you have a winner and a loser.
Well, cheerleading's like figure skating, as you know, because it's more of a routine that they're doing, and they're being judged on their performance. Which I know is something you're not a fan of necessarily, because you like to have a score that you can see at the end of something who has more of something than the other person.
And there's also different areas where it's like, okay, best floor routine, best pyramid, and these are not the actual technicalities. That's me coming from like a sports ball person trying to talk cheerleading, and that's something to know the lingo. So I will not say I am any versed in cheerleading, but I do appreciate the fact of just the technicality that is put into it that, like you mentioned, they're judged by. So I can watch something and know, okay, that's aesthetically pleasing or that's not aesthetically pleasing, but I couldn't define the reasons why.
That's right. Something else that it probably is going to peeve you a little bit is diving, swimming and diving. I know the diving, they judge them on the dives too.
They do. So yes, those are all the things that I probably need to learn a little bit more about. And speaking,
swimming, they time them, so
yeah, swimming, I can get behind.
There. Yeah.
Yes. It makes sense to me. Okay, you're doing, the backstroke, the freestyle, the medleys. It's basically just track in the water. And I ran track in college and all through high school, so I get it. It makes sense to my questionable brain. And speaking of diving, I learned this year. Benson Boone, Beautiful Things, was a diver in the state of Washington.
For Monroe. He finished 6th.
finished 6th in swimming and diving. And speaking of swimming and diving, that's going on. It actually starts today over on the west side, King County Aquatic Center. So swimming and diving going on today through February 22nd. So there will be a new 6th place finisher.
Maybe they'll win a Grammy, too. You never know. You never know what's going to happen to them after they're done with sports. They'll go pro in something other than sports.
But he's still using his diving. We saw at the Grammys doing the flip off of the piano.
Yeah, still got the athleticism.
Exactly.
That's right. I want to give a shout out to the bowlers, though, MCC bowlers. They just had the tournament at Atomic Bowl a couple weeks ago. And Kennewick High won first place. Hermiston was second. Walla Walla was third.
And that was in the 3A. And in the 4A, it's really great that Tri-Cities is starting to make a name for themselves in the bowling scene. Kamiakin got their first hardware in previous years. And head coach for Kamiakin Bowling is Scott Biglin, also the football coach. Yep. You're like, I know that name. Where do I know that name? And there's a lot of crossover. I mean, you see it with Scott Bond involved in a lot of things. And even Chad Herron, the head basketball coach for Chiawana, is also heavily involved in football. So there's a lot of crossover, and it's really fun that the coaches in the Tri-Cities don't just support the big shows in town. Being basketball and football, I think, as a sports fan, we kind of see what the favorites are, but that they support all athletes and all students. And social media has really helped in that aspect, too, because I wouldn't have been able to learn or keep up with a lot of these lesser known because I'm doing a lot of things. I mean, today we have the show, and then I have an Eastern game, and last night I was at the district championship for District 5 Davis girls. So it's not that I don't care, but it's really hard to go out of my way to seek out, I'm going to go to this diving competition or look up when a bowling competition is happening to go to it and check it out and learn about it.
There's so many sports for the average sports fan to digest. You have to prioritize what's most important to you. And we really want to make sure that people in the lesser-known sports are getting focus.
Exactly, and I think social media is great at that, and I love to cover them too. We have on the show before, and we will continue to cover that, covering all that are excelling in their sports. So coming up on the show, we're going to be talking wrestling, the MAC Classic also going on this weekend, plus basketball playoffs, district championships happening, state coming up. So we're going to go over the top teams in the area and a look at those coming up. You're listening to the Sports Council on 1340 ESPN, your Tri-Cities leader in sports.
Grab your blanket and your hot chocolate and wrap up with the movie theater thing dozen from Krispy Kreme. Yes, your local Krispy Kreme is teamed with Hulu to bring you a movie-themed collection filled with all your theater favorites. Grab them while they last, February 17th through March 9th. Watch your Krispy Kreme app for upcoming holidays and limited-time donuts. And remember to schedule your fundraiser. It's fun, easy, and profitable. Your local Krispy Kreme. Come in with a sweet tooth, leave with a smile. 2805 Dupertail in Richland.
Inconveniences can happen at, inconvenient times. JRT Mechanical has plumbers and HVAC technicians available 24/7 if an emergency does arise. Or if you feel like your house isn't cooling like it used to, or if you're tired of a hose leaking from last winter's freeze, JRT is an honest, reliable company that's been in the Pacific Northwest for more than 3 decades. Give JRT Mechanical a call at 509-314-4314 or visit jrtmechanical.com.
If you've got a winery, brewery, or dairy, why buy industrial parts and supplies from across the country? Central Industrial Sales is your local source for supplies and equipment for the dairy, food processing, winery, and brewing industries. We specialize in custom fabrication, industrial cleaning equipment, sanitary fittings, valves, pumps, chemicals, and many other supplies. Everything's available through our website, by phone, or by dropping by our office. Call 509-375-4032 or find us at centralindustrialsales.com.
You're listening to Jamie Council on the Sports Council.
Welcome back to the Sports Council. I'm Jamie Council, joined by Will Bradley. We're talking playoffs, and in segment 1, we went over state swimming and diving going on this weekend, as well as the MAC Classic happening as well.
State wrestling, Chiawana, they're the favorites.
They got second last year, and they had a historic run, having a four-peat. But it's interesting in the wrestling world because, yes, Chihuahua has been the standard. Manuel Plata took over and still won a state championship, but they took second to Meade, and you say, where did Meade come from? Well, they moved up from 3A to 4A, so winning the district was Meade over Chihuahua. So it's going to be really fun to see that battle go on for years to come now that Meade is a 4A, and last year Chihuahua took second as a team in the MAC Classic.
How big of a difference is it having them in a different conference, having a rivalry with a team in a different conference?
It's really fun to be able to see people that you're going to see at state. So think about it. If you're being able to see nearby your competition, it's only going to bode well because you know that who you're seeing is going to be who you're going to see at the MAC Classic. So if anything, it's going to be iron sharpens iron, and Meade is kind of taking over this year, where at districts they won most of the championships. And to put it into perspective, from a point stand, Meade had 493.5 points. Chihuahua was second at the District 6 4A tournament that went on in Pasco.
Yeah.
Chihuahua had 300 points. So that is almost a 200-point difference between first and second. Meade really stepping up and making a name for themselves in 4A. And Richland, also some good wrestlers. They had 270. So Richland trailing Chihuahua by 30 points. So it's not taking anything away from Chihuahua. You can't win state every year. Chihuahua was the standard, winning multiple times in a row. But, Richland is stepping up. Meade is now in 4A. So it bodes well for Eastern Washington, where everybody's looking at Chihuahua and Meade. And even going back to Homa was the winner as a team in the MAC Classic last year in 4A.
Who are some of the individual wrestlers people should focus on?
So if we're taking a look at the districts, you have a lot of Meade. Braden Harvey of Meade took first at 215, and a lot of it was Chihuahua and Meade. For example, at the 215, Landon Bolson taking second. Brooks Knight in 285 in the heavyweights took first, and Hector Sanchez was second. And going down, Asa Knutson of Hanford won in the 190. So there's a lot of different weight classes. So you can find individual achievement, even if it's not as a team, such as Meade, because Knutson beating Logan Ula of Meade in the championship at the District 6 4A championships that went on in Pasco. Cole Schumacher of Meade took first in 175. Noah Holman of Gonzaga Prep took first in 165. And in 157, Zachariah Delgado of Chihuahua, he has a record of 21-9, beat Elijah Leader of Hanford in 157. At 115, Josu Reyes of Pasco beat Carlos Espinoza of Chihuahua. In 144, Israel Acosta of Gonzaga Prep beat Dayton Johnson of Chihuahua. That one was a big upset because you take a look at Dayton Johnson, has a name for himself. His brother, also a big wrestler through Chihuahua, and he has a record of 38-4. And Acosta, nothing to take away from him, but he's 10-3, so just not as many matches under his belt. So that was one that I was really surprised to see. And I think it's just because I covered his brother and something in you. If you have that familiarity, you're thinking that they are the standard. So I think Dayton Johnson is going to go into state with a lot to prove, taking second in the districts. And as we move down, 138, it was Xavier Salinas of Richland beating Oliver Russell of Chihuahua to take first at districts. And 132, Victor Luna of Chihuahua beating Joe Ethan Tristan of Kamayakan. 126, Billy Weisgerber of Meade beating Adrian Shima of Chihuahua. And Shima 22-10. That was by a fall. And at 120, Kaisik Lundquist of Meade beating Traden Lundquist of Meade. And that one was really interesting. They didn't wrestle. It's just something where they decided, probably rock, paper, scissors. You've seen that because it doesn't matter. You're both going to state.
Yeah.
And at 113, Derek Odell of Richland. This one was a bomber on bomber. Bryce Landman of Richland taking second at 113. And at 106, a Bodie Slater of Meade beating Willis Tomio of Ferris. And 106, a lot of those guys are freshmen because that's really small.
Yeah, they haven't developed yet physically.
Yeah, so I was taking a look because I'm like, oh, that's really small, but it's freshmen, so it makes sense to have that weight class.
You learn technique.
Exactly.
While you're building up your physique, to be in the 140s, 150s, 160s when they get older.
Absolutely.
Because they go through growth spurts.
Exactly. So best of luck to me, Chiawana, and everybody in the Tri-Cities. And it's not just about the 4A, even though that is exciting. Toppenish took first last year, so we'll see if they can repeat. A lot of good wrestlers have come out of the Valley, and wrestling a big deal for Toppenish.
So the Matt Classic this weekend, who's going to win from the area?
I'm really rooting for Meade. I mean, of course, covering Chiawana, that was great, but they absolutely dominated in districts. It's their first time in 4A, and they are an Eastern Washington school, so that is the rule, if you will, is that you're rooting for your home team, then you're rooting for your hometown, and you're rooting for your home districts. So with that being said, if Chiawana or Richland, Hanford, Pasco aren't going to win, you might as well root for Meade. And welcome to 4A, Meade Panthers.
I don't know, though. If I'm Chiawana, I don't think I could root for Meade, because if it's that simple for them to come up one class and all of a sudden they're going to dominate, hey, we were the ones dominating.
I'm not saying that Chiawana should root for Meade, because if they're wrestling against Meade, don't root for them. All I'm saying is that you shouldn't be upset if Meade does win a state championship. Last year it was Tahoma. So do you want Tahoma or do you want Meade to win a state championship if it can't be Chiawana?
Meaning me?
Yes.
No, I want the Eastern Washington school.
That's what I'm saying. So
okay.
Yes,
okay.
If Meade is wrestling Chiawana, obviously
well, I guess if you're a Chiawana fan, maybe not a Chiawana athlete.
Yes.
Chiawana wrestler.
Yes. If Chiawana is wrestling
Chiawana
Meade,
fan root for Meade?
If they're not wrestling against them. If it's the state championship and it's a West Side school against Meade, come on. At that point, you're just salty. But I love the competition. So the Matt Classic going on this weekend. Keep up with that on NFHS. You can watch all the action from every mat. Moving on, coming up March 5th through 8th, state basketball, 3 locations throughout Washington, 3A and 4A going on in Tacoma, 1A and 2A going on in Yakima at the Sundome, and in Spokane, it's the Bees.
Talking about the Bees, we got to give some love to Columbia Burbank.
We do. They are the team to beat, ranked number 1 in the RPI, runner-up last year in state, losing to Colfax, and it could very well be Columbia Burbank and Colfax again. Freeman, second right now in RPI, and RPI doesn't always mean everything, but it is a good measuring stick. So Columbia Burbank, they didn't lose a whole lot of talent. They did lose one player, but it was a very young team, and talking to head coach Schumacher of maybe that playing a role potentially, because if you're a player thinking you're a junior, there's no now or never mentality, but Shoemaker's saying that a lot of those players, Tristan Friedmont and Quincy Scott, now seniors, it's do or die, and right now they're ranked number 1 in the RPI, very hungry. They got second in state last year and are still feeling
So
that.
they're the favorites this year.
They are in the RPI, but it's gone back and forth, and so it could very well be a Colfax, Columbia Burbank, but both of those teams, Eastern Washington, but there's no doubt Columbia Burbank Coyotes have a shot at winning a state title in the boys 2B.
Let's stay on the boys' side. MCC schools that are most likely to make some waves at state, like Richland, the Bombers?
They are, and let's finish with the Bees first, is that DeSales, when we're talking local, because it's not just all about the 4A schools, okay. DeSales ranked 3rd in the RPI, but Richland got 2nd last year in state, and That's a big surprise, is maybe not to them a big surprise, but right now they're second in the RPI behind Gonzaga Prep and a lot of Eastern Washington talent, West Valley and Davis, 6th and 7th. And West Valley and Davis are playing tonight in the District 5 Championship. And staying with the 4A, Eastern Washington, Meade number 11, Chiawana number 13. So we are looking at Richland and a lot of good talent. Landon Northrop averaging 26.82 points per game, so almost 27 points per game. And then Lance Hornvet averaging almost 24 points per game. So 2 Richland Bombers leading the MCC in scoring.
Shifting over the girls' side, who's looking really good there?
We talked about Davis boys, and we mentioned it earlier in the show. Davis girls, they've been atop the RPI, got 3rd in state last year. And it's a program it's really hard to root against because Davis, they're known for their boys' teams, but not so much for their girls' teams. Head coach Akil White, he took over the program 5 years ago, and they had their first ever trip to state. And then last year, it's their first ever hardware as a program, and this year, do the math, but they got 3rd last year and are ranked number 1 in the RPI, and they already stamped their ticket to state. They won the district championship last night against West Valley. 100-25.
Wow.
Was the score for girls basketball games.
Who's the most dominant players on that team?
Well, you talk about, there's a lot of dominant players, so it's not just one person, but I am looking forward to Cheyenne Hull. She is going to be a talent, and this is the thing with them. They're young. Most of their studs are sophomores. Cheyenne Hull, the younger sister of Trista Hull, currently plays at Portland, played for LaSalle. She's just a sophomore and very dominant in every phase of the game. And I wish I knew how many turnovers they had. But as far as points go, they had 3 players with more than 20 points. With 26 was Aubrey Brandt. So Aubrey Brandt had 26, Hull had 20, and with 22 was Isa Garcia. And then with 18 was Dietz Parrish, the transfer from Wapato. So you ask who's the player to look for, and that's why Davis, they're so hard to stop, is because there's not just one. There's 4 or 5 and even into the bench. So a fun program to watch. Also a fun program to watch as we're talking about 4A girls. You can't not mention Chiawana, Malia Rude, Kaya Foster. Rude heading to Washington State next year, but this year she's a Riverhawk as well as Kaya Foster. Next year she'll be heading to the University of New Mexico.
MCC champs.
So a lot of good representation from Eastern Washington, and the district championship is tonight. So Chiawana looking to stamp their ticket to state, and then there's only 2 bids for districts. So some years there's 3. It's really tough because
only 2 this year.
The winner of tonight's district championship gets a bid, and Kamayakin's still in that. And if you catch the Sports Council last week, Lane Shoemaker, head coach of Kamayakin girls basketball, said it's really tough because you have 3 teams in the top 15. Chiawana 4th in the RPI, Meade 10, Kamayakin 14. One of them isn't going to go to the Dome.
All right, we're going to talk about the biggest surprises of the basketball season coming up next on the Sports Council.
We are, so we're going to take a quick break here from our sponsors. You're listening to the Sports Council on 1340 ESPN, your Tri-Cities leader in sports.
Inconveniences can happen at, well, inconvenient times. JRT Mechanical has plumbers and HVAC technicians available 24/7 if an emergency does arise. Or if you feel like your house isn't cooling like it used to, or if you're tired of a hose leaking from last winter's freeze, JRT is an honest, reliable company that's been in the Pacific Northwest for more than 3 decades. Give JRT Mechanical a call at 509-314-4314 or visit jrtmechanical.com.
If you've got a winery, brewery, or dairy, why buy industrial parts and supplies from across the country? Central Industrial Sales is your local source for supplies and equipment for the dairy, food processing, winery, winery, and brewing industries. We specialize in custom fabrication, industrial cleaning equipment, sanitary fittings, valves, pumps, chemicals, and many other supplies. Everything's available through our website, by phone, or by dropping by our office. Call 509-375-4032 or find us at centralindustrialsales.com.
Grab your blanket and your hot chocolate and wrap up with the movie theater thing dozen from Krispy Kreme. Yes, your local Krispy Kreme is teamed with Hulu to bring you a movie-themed collection filled with all your theater favorites. Grab them while they last, February 17th through March 9th. Watch your Krispy Kreme app for upcoming holidays and limited time donuts. And remember to schedule your fundraiser. It's fun, easy, and profitable. Your local Krispy Kreme. Come in with a sweet tooth, lean with a smile. 2805 Dupertail in Richland.
You're listening to the Sports Council on 1340 ESPN, the Tri-Cities leader in sports.
Welcome back to the Sports Council. Jamie Council joined by Will Bradley. It's going to be an exciting basketball playoff scene, going over some of the teams to look out for. I'm excited.
You've been covering the entire basketball season, not just the MCC, but around the area, Central and Southeastern Washington as well. What surprised you the most this basketball season?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of surprises. I would say team surprises. Taking a look at the 2A, which I wish we could cover every single team, every single district. But SELA winning the District 5 2A, Grandview was by far the favorite, but it was actually Prosser that knocked them out. That was a 3-point decision in the semifinals. So now Grandview needs to claw their way to get into the state tournament, as well as Prosser. Both Prosser girls and boys ranked
Mustangs.
high. Yep, Prosser Mustangs. So Prosser knocked Grandview out, and so Grandview has been looking really good this year, and now they're having to fight for their life to get to state.
I'm really impressed with all the work you've done. You know, we have the Sports Council on every Thursday. Jamie's really gone in depth with a lot of these programs, not just the marquee ones that everybody knows about. So I really want to give kudos to you for that.
I appreciate that. I try my best, and you can't cover everything. But that's not to say that my inbox isn't open, where I love to hear feedback, love to hear tidbits, because I'm just one person. I can't possibly cover everything. I can't possibly know everything. I know that's really hard for people to believe.
It's hard for me to believe that you don't know everything.
So yes, I do not know everything. So that's why I love this show, is it gives an outlet to give some kudos to these coaches, to these programs, and serving a purpose too, where I've had college coaches tune in when I've interviewed players to hear how they conduct themselves, what they have to say. And it really does have a place in the market where, local is going out of style. Unfortunately. It's unfortunately going out of style. So you know what? We're going to try to keep it local as much as we can.
We're going to kick it back. We're going to throw it back. We're going to do it the old school way.
Exactly. But that's not to say that we don't like other things going on
no, that's
either.
Not true. Yeah.
Mariners
are coming up on 1340 ESPN. Their spring training opener is tomorrow.
And the Kraken also on 1340.
Kraken are on Four Nations break. They're back. Yeah, they're on 1340. They'll be back on Saturday. The Four Nations championship game is tonight with the USA and Canada. You have ESPN Plus. You can watch the Four Nations game, and you can also enjoy Jamie Council doing the Eastern Washington game. Quickly preview the Eastern game for me.
So they're playing Northern Colorado tonight. Tip-off is at 6 o'clock on ESPN Plus. And 2 home games this weekend also on Saturday. You're going to watch Northern Arizona. You're going to want to watch Northern Arizona. They're really good. I mean, I love covering Eastern. They have a lot of young talent. That's something Eastern, I guess. It's a rebuilding year. Last year, a 29-win season. Tournament champions for the Big Sky, regular season champions. And they lost all 5 of their starters. So they start 2 freshmen this year, really good freshmen. Mm-hmm. And they're also getting local freshman Dylan Dress out of Kennewick. So there's going to be another reason to tune into them. But it is a rebuilding year. Meanwhile, Northern Arizona sitting second in the Big Sky behind Montana State, but ranked number 1 in the media and the coaches poll heading in, as well as they have the Big Sky preseason MVP and Sophia Glancy. So Saturday is going to be the big one. And tonight will be a good look at Eastern Washington hosting Northern Colorado at Reese Court in Cheney or on ESPN+.
You going to be going to Boise for Starch Madness?
I don't think so. I haven't gotten the call yet, but I wanted to be there, but I will be at the Spokane Arena for state. And then NWAC is also coming up. The JC, the JUCO in the area, those championships going on the second weekend in March in Pasco. But we're out of time. We're going to wrap it up here on 1340 ESPN. It's the Sports Council. Will, I'm glad we did this.
This is fun. We should do this more often.
We should.
It's great working with you, and of course, directly working with you. You're sitting right across from me here in the studio.
Will does a lot of the work behind the scenes, so you deserve, I would call it FaceTime, but you know what? We're both
People
moving.
that have seen me don't say that. There's a reason why I work in radio and not TV.
Well, thanks for joining Two Faces in Radio here on 1340 ESPN. It's the Sports Council.
Don't forget, you can listen online, 1340ESPNradio.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Until next time, I'm Jamie Council. Now we go back to your originally scheduled Seattle sports programming.